Welcome to the Reviews Without Remorse podcast with Joe and Dave. Be warned, the discussions in this podcast may contain detailed spoilers. For spoiler-free reviews of newly released films, be sure to check out our show on our YouTube channel. Enter at your own risk and enjoy the show.
We want what they want, and what every other person who starts a podcast and spills their guts and gives everything they had wants. For our listeners to love us as much as we love them. My name is David, and I believe the mind is the greatest weapon, and the man who knows that to survive a war, you have to become a war, Joe.
What's up, partner?
This is episode 135, and in this show we will discuss Steven Soderbergh has a new movie going direct to Netflix. Joe and I take a look at the trailer for The Laundromat. He's back, and he has a new trailer. Terminator Dark Fate Trailer 2 is out. I think Scorsese's going to sue someone. The final trailer for Joker has hit the interwebs, and we discuss. Taika Waititi's new film, Jojo Rabbit, gets a trailer, and man, is it crazy. And then, moving from pathos to shoot, shoot, bang, bang, John Rambo returns in the marketing division titled Rambo First Blood Part 2. What's up, my man?
Not much. Glad to be back at my regular desk. I feel like I'm just finally getting back home because it's been crazy since I've been home. But glad to be here, my friend. Glad to be talking to you.
Glad to have you here, and glad to be talking to you as well. And we've got a couple of things to discuss, so whenever you're ready, my man.
Let's get to it.
First, you must ask yourself, are you wealthy?
Simple truth of the world is that most games, for someone to win, well, someone has to lose.
Okay, so the general story is that this is kind of sort of based on the Panama Papers. Are you know what the Panama Papers are alleged to be, etc.?
I do not.
Okay, so the Panama Papers was a very brief story, didn't get a lot of traction many years ago, that basically broke down how millionaires basically move their money around the world to shelter themselves from taxes and stuff like that. That's what this movie is basically about, with kind of a Soderbergh twist to it, I suppose.
Okay, interesting.
Yes. It stars Mr. Antonio Banderas, Gary Oldman. By the way, that was awkward in the trailer. It's like Academy Award winner Meryl Streep, Academy Award winner Gary Oldman, Antonio Banderas.
I'm sure he's been nominated for things, hasn't he? Maybe not Oscars, but
I don't know, but he's a fine actor, so there's nothing really wrong with it. It looks like the sillier side of Soderbergh type of films. You know, a little very tongue-in-cheek, very what's the word I'm looking for? Whimsy, like whimsical.
There you go.
That's the word I'm looking for. It's got a hell of a cast. I'm not sure how to feel about it. I'm kind of more impressed by the fact that Soderbergh is basically working for Netflix now.
Yeah, that is interesting. I mean, that's a pretty star-studded cast for a Netflix film, but I guess that's the phenomenon we've been talking about for a while now.
Yeah.
I feel like everything now is streaming this and streaming that, so...
I don't have a problem with it. It also, weirdly, remember we did that discussion about Spielberg trying to change the rules for the Academy Awards so that movies that were on streaming services couldn't be nominated?
Yes.
And this kind of feels like thumbing his nose at that. Soderbergh's never exactly been the type of guy that really went for the accolades of the Oscars and stuff like that, and yet usually is pretty well critically acclaimed. So this kind of feels like, oh, you don't think that Netflix is a viable, source of movies? Well, I'll show you.
Yeah, Spielberg really stuck his foot in his mouth with that one because, I mean, you were... What did we say? Old man shakes fist at clouds or whatever?
I used to be with it, but then they changed what it was. Now what I'm with isn't it, And what's it seems weird and scary to me. It'll happen to you.
You're kind of you're screaming at the storm, buddy, and it's not going to slow down for you. By the way, Red Letter Media did a really funny video, basically talking about the onslaught of streaming services now, and they're looking pretty spot on. I mean, it's here.
Yeah, I'm not a fan. I liked it better when it was just Netflix, and even when it was Netflix and Hulu, that was kind of just okay. But now it's just getting out of freaking hand, man. I'm getting tired of this crap.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering how this is all going to play out, because I can't see. I mean, again, it's looking like there's a lot of streaming services. I mean, I feel like we're looking at possibly 100. Whereas I think just a few weeks ago, we were probably talking about just a couple, and we were already kind of going, oh my God, look how many of these things I'm going to have to get, yada, yada. Now it's just getting out of hand. So I don't know. I mean, we'll see how it plays out, but I can't see, not sure how this is going to sustain itself.
Talk fast.
You first.
My name is Sarah Connor. August 29, 1997. It was supposed to be Judgment Day. But I changed the future. Saved 3 billion lives. Enough of a resume for you?
No.
Okay, I'm still not impressed. And the fact that they keep throwing James Cameron's name up there as if that's the big... Like it doesn't say Linda Hamilton or Arnold Schwarzenegger. It says, James Cameron and the guy who directed Terminator in the little stuff. Okay? Keep saying that all the time. And I'm still not feeling this movie. I'm still not feeling Terminator Dark Fate at all.
I am with you, and I'm already starting to feel like, you know what? They dragged out poor Linda Hamilton for this. I don't know. And honestly, I didn't really appreciate. Again, first of all, this thing feels really oddly low stakes, like low budget kind of looking. Like there's no big exciting set pieces, and I keep looking at these trailers, and just all it makes me want to do is watch Terminator 2 again. And honestly, I wasn't crazy about the scene in the hotel room where Linda Hamilton's got the drop on whoever this new person is.
Her name is Grace, played by Mackenzie Davis.
And she spins around and throws Linda Hamilton into the wall. I'm like, can we respect our characters, please? Again. The characters that have been around forever. You wouldn't have a franchise if not for her. Let's show a little respect, please.
I'm just trying to get across that she's, enhanced, a badass, whatever.
Right.
I have nothing against Mackenzie Davis, the actress, or anything like that. I've actually seen her in a couple of good things. I have nothing. I feel nothing. I watch this and I feel empty. When we're going to get to the Joker in a second, and I have a kind of a take on that, so to speak. But the thing about it is like, I don't like the Joker, the up and coming Joker movie, as a translation of the comic, but I'm interested in seeing it as a movie.
Yes.
This film makes me feel nothing in either direction.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I have yet to see anything from this movie that makes me remotely interested in it. I think it's going to be another piss poor sci-fi, just special effects and stuff, and not in a good way. Yeah, listen, I'm stumbling for something to say here, because there's nothing in these trailers that I can grasp at, and I don't see anything to make me feel like this is going to be worth our time. I mean, we'll see it, because we have to.
We have no choice, because it's on the damn schedule now.
Because we gotta. But, yeah, not excited.
Can you please stop bothering my kid?
Sorry.
Arthur, I have some bad news for you. This is the last time we'll be meeting.
You don't listen, do you? You just ask the same questions every week. How's your job? Are you having any negative thoughts? All I have are negative thoughts.
The King of Comedy is a movie we're going to have to watch before we see this movie, isn't it?
I'll watch The King of Comedy anytime, frankly.
I agree. It's a tremendous movie. One of Scorsese's finest. I think it was like his first PG movie too. Or was that Into the Night? I don't remember which it was, but there was. But yeah, the King of Comedy is actually a PG movie. This movie, the Joker trailer is so beholden to that movie, and it's so obvious. I mean, even down to having Robert De Niro playing the part of Murray.
Yeah.
You know, Mr. Rupert Pupkin now kind of reversing the position around. And as I said during the Terminator review, it as a translation of the Joker character, not very excited. Everything else about this movie excites me, though. I love the look of it. I kind of like where they're going with the character study of it and everything like that. It's not the Joker movie I would have done, but I'm still intrigued by it.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I go back to what I said. I think the first thing we saw from this film, I remember saying that it looks like an interesting movie, but I don't see how in any way, shape, or form this is a Batman movie. I don't see how Batman would walk around the next corner in this world. And I feel more of that than ever now. But like you said, as a comic book movie, I'm not seeing it, but just as a movie on its own, it's definitely got my interest now. I'm definitely on board with this, and I'm very curious to see how this plays out.
I don't think it's on our schedule, is it?
I don't think so. But
we may have to rectify that.
We certainly might. I gotta even look at when this is actually going to come out. But
October the 4th. Next month.
October the 4th. Okay. Well, okay.
I think we're in the middle of our Terminator run during that.
We are. But I'll tell you what. I mean, if we see it, if we just want to take a little time in the beginning and talk about it, it's fine by me.
Fine by me too.
Here's Master Jojo. You're a top man. Prepare to leave the house.
Today you boys will be involved in such activities as war games, ambush techniques, and blowing stuff up.
I don't think I can do this.
Was? Of course you can.
When I was your age, I had an imaginary friend. Got me in so much trouble.
Okay, so Jojo Rabbit kind of came out of left field for me. I didn't even know Taika Waititi was doing another movie before he was doing the next Thor movie. And as I'm watching this, you know what I was thinking of? I was thinking of the remake that Mel Brooks did of To Be or Not to Be, where he himself played Hitler at one point in it. Because the guy who was playing Hitler, that's Taika Waititi playing Hitler.
Is it really? Okay.
Yes, it is.
Oh my God! All right.
I gotta tell you, it looks crazy. It looks funny. I kind of want to see it.
I'm with you, actually. I kind of very much want to see it. I think it really looks very interesting, and honestly, I was pretty. He's definitely honing his inner Wes Anderson with this one.
Oh, for sure.
Visually, it looks spectacular. I thought every frame was absolutely just marvelous. So
amazing depth in some of the shots, right?
Yeah. Oh my God. I mean, it looks funny. It looks like. It looks great. So I'm totally on board with this one. And by the end, when the kid says it's not a great time to be a Nazi or something, like, I was laughing out loud. I'm like, this could be pretty funny.
Yeah, you know what? Could use something funny like that, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah.
The idea that the kid has like an imaginary Hitler in his head, which I'm assuming that's what it's supposed to be.
Oh my God! Right?
Yeah. Just crazy. What imagination. I love imagination. It might be crap. I don't care. I love the imagination. Visually, it's stunning. And so far, Taika has been pretty damn awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, he has not let us down yet. So I'm open for this one. I'm there.
I'm with you there, man.
Joined Army 6 June 69. Accepted Special Forces. Helicopter and language qualified. expert in light weapons and guerrilla warfare. Sylvester Stallone is back as Rambo.
John Rambo is released from prison by the government for a top-secret covert mission to the last place on Earth he'd want to return, the jungles of Vietnam. Written by Sylvester Stallone and James Cameron, story by Kevin Jarre, based on characters created by David Morrell, directed by George P. Cosmatos. Rambo, First Blood, Part 2.
It's here.
Every 80s trope in action movies is on display in this movie, and I couldn't love it anymore.
Yes, it is, but you should clarify and say, I think this started many of those tropes, and this definitely set the bar for a lot of 80s action movies. But go ahead.
I'm gonna put that. I'll read you exactly what I wrote on my notes as I was watching it. My God, the amount of things in this movie that would later become 80s action tropes and cliches is outstanding. This movie is the center of all of that.
Yep. Absolutely.
Well, big departure from the first one. The first one being a little bit more, want to say mental, maybe? Maybe mental is being mean, but I don't mean it to be mean. But it was definitely
cerebral?
More... Yeah, the first one was definitely a bit more cerebral, with small bits of action thrown in there. But the action was never sensationalized, shall we say. It was, a bit grounded.
Mm-hmm.
This one, they kind of threw all that out the door and said, nope, we're just going for broke.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. I'll tell you what. I'm mildly surprised hearing you say that. I first of all, I completely agree. I feel like in some respects, this feels like, and I know I mentioned this last week, it's almost like we kind of went from Rocky 1 to Rocky 4 pretty quickly.
Yeah.
This is kind of the Rocky 4 of this franchise. It like you said, it just went totally off the rails, crazy action, fun. And again, I love how and by the way, I'm going to give a lot of the credit of this to James Cameron, because they really do. You can sort of see certain elements. There's James Cameron, especially back then, he had such a gift for writing these stories that just turns it up to 11. Where like every time you sort of think you've hit a peak or you think it's over, it only amps up. The original Terminator, the Terminator's chasing them, and there's big chases and big this and that happens, and then the big truck explodes. We think it's all done, thank God. He's burning up in the fire, and then suddenly the big metal skeleton stands up out of the wreckage, and it's like, oh my God, and it just keeps on going. And then the big explosion happens in the factory. Then suddenly the little arm comes out. It's like you can't kill this thing, right? The Rambo story here is very similar, where it just every time you sort of think you've seen it all, they take it up to another level. And it just works fantastically. I really have to. There's a lot about this film that is just kind of like just silly and cheesy, and I totally acknowledge that, but that's half of the fun. But you really have to hand it to the story structure here. They really knew how to do a spectacular screenplay where the action just amps up and amps up and amps up, and boy, is it a satisfying watch.
Very satisfying. Surprisingly satisfying. I mean, there's no real character dimension in this at all. Everything is very 2D. Yet, it works. It strangely works. It just goes to show that sometimes you don't need to have completely fleshed out characters. And yet, and weirdly, like, they're fleshed, but they're 2D fleshed. I mean, Murdoch is the obvious villain. Pavlovsky, oh my God. Colonel Podofsky. I love Colonel Podofsky.
Yes.
I love the actor who plays him, Steven Berkoff, Mr. 80s villain, 101. He is like the 80s villain.
He took on in a very short amount of time. He took on Axel Foley, James Bond, and Rambo.
Yep. I mean, when you put that on your resume, that's it,
right? Oh my God, is he great? And he's still working too. He was in the last thing I saw him in was the girl with the dragon tattoo, and he was great in it.
Yep, he's actually got like 6 movies in post-production right now,
nice.
And one that he's still filming.
Yeah.
So good for him that he's still working. And but yeah, he's excellent. He basically created the '80s villain. As much as Mr. Unknown, I don't know his name. The '80s heavy. Dolph Lundgren Light there, who was his henchman.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is a full-blown action movie when you have a henchman.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah,
pretty much. It's a very fast movie. It's very, very fast. It's very fast paced. It takes logical steps before it goes into areas of complete illogic. I mean, for example, how the hell many arrows did he have? Didn't look like he had that many, but he never seemed to run out. Seemed like he had only 4 of those little explosive things, but he just kept firing those explosive things over and over, including that one. Oh my God! Over the top, he's there against the Vietnamese guy, and the guy's just shooting like crazy, and Rambo just stands, slowly knocks the arrow, pulls it back. Like awesome.
Yeah.
And it's stupid, but it's awesome.
Yeah. I remember when I was a kid watching that. I mean, by the way, most of the time, whenever we do a review, I always watch the movie beforehand. I watched this one beforehand, but if there was ever a time where I didn't need to, this is it. I mean, I can tell you this movie frame by frame by frame. I've seen this so many times when I was a kid. Literally, I don't think there's anything in this that surprises me now as I watch it again. But I remember watching it way back when I was younger. As soon as the videotape came out, I got it and watched it ad nauseum. And I remember that specific scene. Of course, I had like 1 or 2 friends who be like, "That's so stupid. The guy can't hit him, whatever." But Rambo has no problem hitting him with the bow and arrow. And I'm like, well, maybe the bow and arrow is more accurate.
Oh no, it's dumb. I'll be the first to admit it is. There's no logic there. But the thing about this movie is, it set the tone for that. It lets you know right from the beginning, okay, we know the first one was like this really cool action movie and so on and so forth. We get it. But this, we know the first one was a character study and stuff like that. We get that. We're not apologizing for that, but this is different. Right from the get-go, here he comes. They first introduce him and basically explain, hey, Rambo, you've gotten bigger since you've been in prison. It's like, oh, okay, he's freaking on the rock quarry. No wonder.
Yeah.
So
I will say this: Stallone is kind of, I don't know what it is about him, but he's got this kind of physique that looks like he shouldn't have it. Like it's sort of abnormal.
Mm-hmm.
Like he looks just bizarre in this movie, like his muscle tone wise. I mean, he worked at it. He got in incredible shape. You certainly can't take that away from anybody. But yeah, kind of seeing that leap from First Blood to this is odd. I agree with you that it was smart that they had him in the quarry, so that kind of explains things a little bit, I suppose. But yeah, it's just sort of odd. He's sort of like so oddly big. It's just weird.
It was a little, disconcerting to take at first, shall we say? But I felt like it worked, and I felt like, and even taking something silly as he got hit in the head with that shrapnel in First Blood, and he made a makeshift headband for the wound, with the little dangling things down the side. And now all of a sudden, that's his signature look. That's his costume commander look.
There you go.
Because there's no logical reason for him to have it again in this one. Just, I need a headband. Well, you had to tie it off on the side, so we're going to tie it off on the side like the last time. So, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, very true, very true. Again, like you said, total 80s action trope. Big muscle guy, no shirt on. Schwarzenegger would sort of try it his way with Commando. It didn't quite work for me. But also silly fun. But this one really hits the sweet spot.
It does. It hits all the right points. It takes itself serious, but isn't like so far up its own butt that it's like, look, we're just having fun here.
Mm.
You know, it reminds you. You know, it tries some weird stuff. I mean, you know, oh look, you know, let's give Rambo a love interest. It's like, ooh, it feels a little forced, but okay.
Yeah.
Nothing against the actress. Nothing against the actress. I thought she was great for what she had to do and everything. And I like that she wasn't just, you know, simpering in the background or anything like that. That she actually was part of how he got out of prison and everything like that. That was great. But yeah, no, I kind of felt like, oh, that came out of left field.
Yeah, it is sort of strange. Yeah, I guess you need something to kind of push Rambo over the edge to, you know, I guess it's not enough just to have him, captured and tortured, to send him out on a rampage of revenge. I guess you need to make it personal. I guess this is how you do that. And yeah, she's fine. I mean, her kind of broken English kind of comes and goes here and there. Fine, no problem. And I remember, the part when she gets killed, I always say to myself, like, I don't know, like, again, First Blood, it's Rambo taking on a couple small town deputies, and it felt authentic. It felt like, you could get your arms around that. You could understand that and say, yeah, I could see this, and he's pretty badass. Look what he did. Here, he's taking on hundreds of Vietnamese and Russian soldiers, no problem. And the part when she gets killed, I remember thinking, like, it was almost getting like too obvious. He can't be 20 feet away from like 6 guys all shooting at him. Like of course she gets taken out in 2 seconds flat. He stands up in the same exact spot. They're all shooting at him. He's firing back. He takes like half of them out before the one guy runs away. Not one of them can get a shot in. I'm like again, just don't make it so obvious. Like scale it back a little bit.
But that ridiculousness is part of it, man. That's part of its charm. And I know. Coming from the guy who basically stuck his finger so far up the Dark Knight trilogy's butt, and found the tiniest fleck of shit and pointed it out to everybody. Here I am. I basically have to put like a pinky on the ass of this, and I'm just like overflowing in like cliches and shit. And yet I'm still like, give me more of that.
Yeah.
It's all about tone. If you start off with, look, we're just having a good time, just roll with it. Then I'm going to say, okay, I'm just having a good time and I can roll with it. Yeah,
agreed. And it's all about payoff too. And I said it before. I think the payoff here is awesome. I mean, again, the amazing part of this film is that it keeps amping things up. First of all, the breakout scene, I love how this is written where, again, Rambo gets captured. There's kind of a long interrogation, little torture here and there. It's quiet for a long time. And actually, by the way, I should even go back a little further because I remember watching this with friends sort of, way back when, and like the part when he finds the one POW and makes it to the extraction point and a helicopter comes, I had people say to me, like, I thought that was the end of the movie. I really thought it was gonna wrap up that way. That was just the beginning, frankly. He gets captured, interrogated, the big bust out. Again, nice and calm, and right when it's, the lightning strike, I'm coming to get you. Oh my God, it's just phenomenal. Like, just awesome, perfect. The music swell is great. Everything is great. Then you get that scene again. Rambo's taking everybody out, just like First Blood. Very cool. And again, they do sort of mirror things in First Blood, but again, amp it up to a 10 with this. I'm trying to remember what we were talking about, where we said something similar, where it was sort of like a fresh. It felt similar, but then we put a fresh coat of paint on it. Same idea here. Like it's. You see like little echoes of things that happened in First Blood, but it's sort of amped up here when he's hiding in the mud. Oh my God. Like, forget it. Like, stuff like that is awesome. And then he kind of tears stuff out of there. He's blowing stuff up with the arrows. Cool. And by the time you get to the part where he takes over the helicopter, I think even then you're sort of feeling like that's going to be the end. Like, that's the big finale. The big fight in the helicopter. He gets the helicopter and he leaves. But he doesn't. Then he goes back to the camp, blows up the camp, and by the time you realize that he's rescuing all the hostages, that's when you're just like, what? Like, I mean, just so cool. Then you have the big helicopter fight after that. So again, it keeps on going, keeps building up, and it's just awesome. You can't beat this.
Impossible to beat, and it's such a benchmark now for 80s action movies. There's just no other way to put it. It is the benchmark. It is the high watermark of action movies of the 80s. It is what everything went to try to top. To the point that satirizing it, Hot Shots Part 2 as an example. There's a scene where there's Charlie Sheen with his little headband on, and he's running with his M60 that's out of ammunition, and he sees a bunch of bad guys coming up, so he just grabs a bunch of loose bullets, throws them at them, and they all go down.
Yep.
This movie is the origin of that, and you know what? I respect it. I respect the ever-living hell out of this movie.
Yeah.
You know, it is not a perfect movie. It is silly when you break it down to brass tacks, but yet there is still something great and compelling here. I liked the idea. I mean, and at the time, in 85, man, I remember this too. There was still the big controversy about whether there were any POWs still alive in Vietnam, even as far as 85. So there we got a nice little topical thing there. The idea that Murdoch is, you know, like, oh, we don't want to pay the $4 billion in reparations. It's like, I didn't even know that stuff back then. I'm like 15 years old. It's like, reparations? What are you talking about?
Yeah. It is interesting. And by the way, and again, I'm going to say this kind of delicately because on one hand, it's a great thing. On the other hand, it probably comes with an eye roll. But I do recall after this film, there was sort of, and we've talked about this, by the way, like an embrace of Vietnam vets all of a sudden. Like it was sort of a wake-up call to people like, oh yeah, they were there. They did stuff. They went through a lot of stuff, and we kind of didn't really give them any big welcome home. And there was a very heightened sense of that. First of all, there was a lot of, I kind of feel like, I mean, I'm not going to give Rambo credit for all of it by any stretch, but I feel like there was also sort of an increase of the awareness. You know, you would see like those flags, MIA, POW. You know, I think this movie actually did a lot for that at this time. Now, you might call that, well, like somebody might roll their eyes and say, I'm not going to give this 80s popcorn bubblegum movie credit for it. Look, it is what it is. I mean, it was a very popular, I mean, this movie was huge. You know, I mean, it's I think looking back, people sort of forget, but it was a huge movie back then. So, I mean, it was frankly kind of a movement. So there was a lot of things that sort of came from it.
I would say that this movie, and even to a lesser extent, the First Blood, gave us Platoon. Which
absolutely.
It's a movie we should review at some point. We need to review that movie at some point.
Right. It's phenomenal. Right. I mean, there are people. Oliver Stone probably said, "Well, that's great, but I want to show what I think Vietnam was really like," and that's perfectly fine. Yeah. So yeah, I totally agree that this movie started a lot of it kicked up a lot of interest in war movies again, etc. I mean, we got all kinds of crazy. I mean, movies with machine guns were huge in the 80s, and it has a lot to do with this movie.
You know, it's funny. We were talking a lot about this movie, but I feel like we haven't talked a lot about this movie. I mean, we you know, it's okay. The general gist is he is broken out of prison. Not broken out of prison, excuse me. He's released from prison to find proof that there are still soldiers left behind in Vietnam. He goes, he finds one. His camera gets broken during oh god, like right off the bat, he jumps out of the plane and he gets stuck on the plane and has to cut all of his equipment away. It's like there's a part of me that's like, that just doesn't feel real, and yet I accepted it. I was like, okay, sure. You know, that's fine. He jumps out of the plane for some reason. The plane that the people have jumped out of before many, many times. Somehow Rambo screwed it up, which is how I kind of took it. Because, like, you know, you jump out of a plane, the little string, you know, pulls your chute and so on and so forth. But, they had to do that because they had to get him back to, you know, because like, there's this underlying story of, like, how technology is bad. and that only, a real soldier is good.
Yeah. It's right. And again, there are underlying themes in this movie. And the theme is, I'll do it my way. I'll do it the old fashioned way. The blood, like Rambo, like even Troutman says, don't try the blood and guts thing. Let technology do the work. And Rambo doesn't need the technology, doesn't have it, but doesn't need it. Does it his own way. I mean, again, full blown. I can't take a picture of him. Well, I guess I'll just have to throw one over my shoulder and take one home. I mean, it's amazing.
You have the amazing Steven Berkoff. You've got the ever wonderful Richard Crenna taking it up to a whole other level of, you forgot about one thing. What? Rambo. It's like, I mean, it sounds, me saying it sounds so stupid. How the hell did he get so much gravity behind it?
Yeah. And honestly, you really have to, we talked about this a little bit last week. And again, first of all, I like the echoes of First Blood here. You have Troutman sort of doing the talking to the Murdoch character is great because he's partially they're redoing the Teasel character. He represents the establishment, etc. But on the other hand, he's also representing the whole U.S. government, that wouldn't let people win in Vietnam. I mean, again, I'm not going to get into too deeply into that, but again, you had a government that was hamstrung. The soldiers were hamstrung. We didn't, we were fighting a war, but we're kind of trying to sort of do it defensively and not really go too far or do this, whatever. So we hamstrung our people. So yeah, I mean, there's Troutman basically, here's, Johnny America yelling back at the government for screwing that whole thing up. So it really does work. And again, here's Troutman now doing a lot of what I mentioned last week, narrating, saying, drumming up this whole thing about Rambo. Rambo's going to do this and Rambo's going to do that. As the audience, it kind of hypes up the excitement. And it works really, really well. And again, you really have to hand it to Stallone because, again, he really is... like I said, we mentioned it before, but he's become sort of a blockbuster machine at this point. He knows the right ingredients. He knows how to get people cheering. He knows how to get people excited. And that's exactly what is happening here. And you times that by James Cameron's incredible screenplay, and boom, you have a masterpiece on your hands. You have a full-blown blockbuster. So yeah, I mean, it's firing on all cylinders.
And relatively timeless, with the exception of having to mention that it's 85 and the POW looking all holy crap. I mean, there really isn't well, maybe except for the closing song, but we'll get to that. There really isn't any other indication that this takes place in the 80s. It's kind of got a very timeless look to it.
Yeah.
Also, I want to take a brief moment because I want to shout out to Mr. Charles Napier as Murdoch.
Yes.
I mean... The guy, before he passed in 2011, had like 203 film credits to his name, and he was the owner of the station. He did the voice of the owner of the station for The Critic and everything like that.
Yeah, yep.
Here he's got that wonderful voice. He's got that way of sounding serious but looking so condescendingly at you. I love everything about his character in this movie. He's just such a two-dimensional douche, and he plays it so wonderfully.
Yes. He really, really is. I mean, and again, like you said, two-dimensional. And by the way, you also have Martin Kove in here as just one of the side characters. Like, again, all the great 80s villains, the greatest 80s a-holes are here. Just it's such great casting all around.
There's nothing more to say. I really mean, obviously, if you haven't realized it, folks, Joe and I recommend that you see this movie. I'm honestly I feel weird because I mean, it's a very quick movie, and I feel like I don't have anything else to say about it. Isn't that weird?
No, listen, again, it's always hard to talk about the ones that work. I mean, and we talked about it. I mean, the character's great. The compounding action works spectacularly. It's again often imitated and never duplicated. Here's a little bit of trivia. The novelization is good. I don't know if you know this, but we talked last week that First Blood was based on a book by David Morrell, and coincidentally, when this film came out, he was brought on or offered the chance to write the novelization. I mean, you know, and it's something you don't really see much of these days, novelizations of movies. But it was huge back then. There was always a novelization that went with it, and they got the original author, David Morrell, to do it. And honestly, he kind of amps it up a little bit. I like how he wrote the story. In fact, I was sort of crazy about this book when I was younger. Loved it. And again, I love the fact that the original author, took this on. So it was almost like you're taking my favorite action movie, combining it with that same authenticity of having the original author work on it. And there was a whole depth to it. Like they get into, like, Rambo was like, he was into Zen and all this stuff, and it really did get kind of cerebral for a movie that is everything but. The book actually was a little deep. I will say this: I actually did reread it fairly recently, and I kind of felt like, all right, maybe it wasn't quite as good as I remembered it, because I remembered it being spectacular. But it's very good, and honestly, it's if you pick it up on eBay, it's not bad.
It's funny you should say it, because I actually remember reading at least the foreword of that book, because Morrell basically points out in my first novel, Rambo dies in the movies, and here he lives. I remember that specifically. So I must have read the novel as well, because I seem to remember that, like, her code name was like Vietnamese for, like, virgin or something like that. Or something like that. Those are the two things I remember. That just goes to show where my freaking brain is.
And it's funny too, because we were talking earlier about him, like the love interest is that they get very into that. I mean, they literally get into Rambo's history, how he had he had a woman before he went to Vietnam, but by the time he came back, he was so different that when he came home and found her married to somebody else with kids, he just laughed, because he didn't, he didn't know how to process it, and he just didn't have any feeling about it anymore. And that he was just a loner. So when this girl comes along and kisses him, it's like kablam, it's a big deal for him. So, I mean, again, I like the fact that the book actually sort of added sort of a layer of, depth to, again, what on the surface is a mindless action movie. So it was, I think that kind of added to the fact that I sort of always gave this film a lot more props than even your average fan did.
Johnny, this is Troutman. Where the hell are you? John, come in.
Murdoch.
He's here.
Rambo, this is Murdoch. We're glad you're alive. Where are you? Give us your position and we'll come to pick you up.
Murdoch. I'm coming to get you.
Directed by George P. Cosmatos. We should probably give that man a shout out. He didn't have a very long career. He died back in 2005. But Rambo? Cobra? Tombstone?
I feel like you sort of mentioned the one thing that I'm going to kind of, my feeling with this director, and I've heard things about him, but as far as
I have too, but I'm curious to hear yours.
Basically, I think Stallone hires him because he's the yes man, and Stallone is essentially directing these films. I'm pretty sure Stallone more or less directed this Rambo and Cobra. Yep. So, yeah, I don't know. What's your take on it?
And that's actually also what I heard, because there has been talk for many, many years that Tombstone was not directed by George P. Cosmatos. There are some people that say it was actually Kurt Russell that did most of the directing. Have you heard that?
I did, yes. And so he's a very hands-off kind of a director.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure how to take that. I felt like I should, throw it out there. And yeah, no, he's like the world's greatest ghost director. That's the way I hear it.
Yeah.
And speaking of ghost directing, we probably will have to cover Tombstone at some point. I feel like that's another movie that needs to be covered.
It's fine by me.
Yeah.
Fine by me. One of the things we could also mention, by the way, is Cameron kind of distanced himself from this movie a little bit.
Very much so.
Yeah, which is interesting because, again, I don't. I get that there's politics in the movie. I wouldn't call the politics heavy-handed, but that's me. Somebody else might feel very differently. I kind of feel like, look, it's an action movie. It's not supposed to be sensitive and whatever, and it's about war. So, and I guess you could say, to quote Hot Shots Part 2, war. It's fantastic. So, yeah, okay, there's that. But I don't see why somebody would feel or take that so close to heart that he would have to sort of distance himself and say, I didn't put the politics in it, he did. Whatever, it's fine. It's a successful action film, and Cameron did a great job. So
when you have two very strong personalities, and maybe not at that time, but like if Sylvester Stallone 1985 met 2000 and when did Avatar come out? Or actually Titanic. I think Titanic was the time. 1997 James Cameron. The egos on those two could probably start a gravity well that would suck the earth into a black hole.
Yep. Yeah, pretty much.
So it's not surprising that the two of them may or may not have gotten along. It's just,
yeah,
ego meets ego. Like Stallone has mellowed in his later years. I haven't heard him be quite as arrogant or egotistical as he was at the height of his fame in the 80s. Cameron will always think Cameron is awesome until the day he dies, and we're gonna have to start doing some James Cameron movies at some point. But we should get back to this movie, and we should probably give it a score, too.
You know what? This is one of those times where do I just let myself enjoy the guilty pleasure, or do I get all criticky and say, it's okay? Listen, I love this movie. I've always loved it. Thought it's just such a fun... And it's the kind of movie, too, I don't know if inspirational is the right word, but I kind of find that any movie that successfully gets your adrenaline going is sort of inspirational, and it's a great movie to just kind of wake you up, and make you want to do stuff. I don't know. Again, is the critic in me going to throw water on it and call it goofy fun? Well, it is. You got 20, how many soldiers firing at Rambo and nobody can even graze this guy? Again, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun, and it was a movement. It's an extraordinary film, and no one can deny its success. And even the franchise itself, I think later on tries to backtrack and tries to get back some of the seriousness that it had in First Blood. And that's a worthy, something to try to strive for. But again, this sucker it's in some ways a perfect action film. I think I've already kind of talked about Die Hard as being the perfect action film. I find Lethal Weapon to be like the perfect buddy cop action film. I think Rambo is the perfect of these kind of one-man war movies. This became a genre unto itself. And as I said before, often imitated and never duplicated. Gonna give it an 8. I part of me that wants to give it even higher, but I got to kind of temper my, I got to be a little real too and say, okay, it's silly fun, but wildly successful silly fun, and I would call that a high 8, frankly.
Modern audiences will probably look at this movie and roll their eyes, and I couldn't blame them. With the way that action has gone and everything like that, I can see why some of the things would seem so cliche, so, I can't even think, whimsical. I'm not 100% sure that's even the right word. But part of being a critic is not just taking the science of movie making and try to quantify it into something and break it down, but there's also a personal element to it. Star Wars is Star Wars to me because it was a huge part of my childhood. The reason why we bag on the newer Star Wars is because we made an emotional connection with those movies when we were younger, and now it kind of feels like we're watching, I don't know, maybe like watching your grandparents passing. I guess that's kind of the closest I can think to it. When it comes to these type of movies from the 80s, there is an emotional connection with me. I was 16 years old. I was at the height of my movie-going experience. I would go on a Saturday morning, first thing, buy a ticket for movie A, and I would literally stay in the theater all day, hopping from movie theater to movie theater to see as many movies as I could. This movie is an 8, and I know that is an emotional score. I'm sure that if, as a real critic, I would probably be, hoity-for-toity and everything like that, but I can't with this movie. This movie is just fun to me. It's exciting. It's still action-packed. It's still wonderfully done. Still great practical effects, excellent explosions, a evolution of the character. Maybe not the evolution I would have liked, but still a fun, exciting romp through the jungle. That is still, as much as maybe people today even still maybe even make fun of it a little bit, there's still that respect that you have to have for this movie, because it was its own thing when it came out, and it deserves that respect. So, 8 it gets from me.
I love it. No, you get no disagreement from me, my friend.
And how about Who Asked You, my man?
Who's going first? I got a hunch we might be stepping on each other's toes with this one, but...
I mean, okay... I already went over the fact that, this movie is the origin of a lot of tropes and cliches. The fact that Ko's eyeshadow and liner still stayed in place after all that running through the water was kind of funny. The fact that he shot the RPG through the broken window and it didn't burn the guys in the back from the exhaust, and then 5 seconds later the window was perfectly fine when he crash landed at the base. These are all things, that you just gotta have to deal with them. And you have to also take into consideration that back in like 85, that was like the starting of the beginning of the home video revolution, where people were watching things over and over again. So I can almost forgive it for some of the continuity errors. I will never forgive any 80s action movies for its insistence of putting some poppy song at the end of it. That's my Who Asked You. That song came out. It's like the first one had that really serious, song that kind of told the story of the movie, which was like, okay, this is pretty cool. And this one has that. I don't even know what the hell it was, but I was listening to it. It's like, I have to turn the movie off. I can't listen to this. This is just awful.
Do you know who's singing, by the way?
I could care less, but you're gonna tell me. Was it Frank Stallone?
It was Frank Stallone.
I am shocked. And in the respect that I am not shocked at all.
Yeah, it's Stallone likes to give friends and family stuff to do. Here you go. Frank, you want to do the song? Yeah, sure. And you're right, it's kind of it's just whatever,
it's disposable.
It is. I mean, it's funny. I was so into the Stallone movie soundtracks back in high school. I literally would do mixtapes of all of them. This one went on there.
Liam,
just because it kind of
it
went on there just because it had to, but I never ever listened to it. I never actually said, "Oh, this is a good song. I want to listen to it." So yeah, pretty dismal song. I'll give you that.
How about you, sir?
You know what? Sometimes I feel like I I hate to swing at the low-hanging fruit, but you know what? I don't know what it was with Stallone with the monologues at the end of his movies around this era. I guess he just figured, well, he kind of did a monologue at the end of First Blood. We got to do it again here, and I guess that's how. But again, it's one of those times where I usually say, like, sometimes dialogue is so bad it feels more like a note in the margin, where someone said to him, he's like, well, how am I going to end this? And somebody says, well, you should really say something probably about, like, talk about all the guys who came over here and spilt their guts and how they just want the country to love them or whatever. And he goes, that's it. Boom. And the guy's like, no. Something like that. Not so obvious. No. That's fine the way it is. I'm going to say it just like that. So, not so great. It kind of deserves all the eye rolls that it's gotten over the years.
I was going to make that my Who Asked You, but I got to tell you, the pop song after just kind of like was, oh, no. I can't do that. I can't let that go.
Yeah.
How about for your consideration, my friend?
This is where I have a hunch we might be thinking along the same lines, but I got to give it to Mr. James Cameron. And it's not too... It's funny because, again, I think that's one of those little trivia things that most people don't even know about this film. The fact that he actually did the story, the screenplay. Mm-hmm. And, again, it is tremendous, and the man knows how to build action to hit a crescendo, and it's just spectacularly done. And by the way, I think it's what's missing. It's kind of the backbone that is missing from the sequel, which we'll talk about next week. I think next week we'll be talking about the lack of that backbone and why it doesn't stand up on its own, pun semi-intended. So yeah, I got to give it to Cameron. I think he does a great job in constructing this story.
I'm gonna 100% agree with you on that one, sir. That is an excellent for your consideration. He was on my list, as well as Mr. Steven Berkoff as the quintessential 80s villain. But I gotta tell you the truth, man. On top of the action, on top of everything else, Jerry Goldsmith, like his first soundtrack was outstanding. But it really, really works for me here. The little electronically string sound and everything like that he gets out of this. Yeah. The music during the big, suiting up montage is still one of my favorite pieces of music in any movie. Not to mention that this is a movie that the music and the editing made loading a camera with film look cool.
Right?
And Goldsmith, absolutely, he needs to get as... I feel like that man did not get enough credit in his lifetime for some of the soundtracks that he's done. And any opportunity I have to call him out for his superlative music writing, I'm going to do it. And here it is.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. And honestly, I think I remember when I saw it kind of feeling like, I wish they brought Jerry Goldsmith back to do the second one. And then I went, wait, they did bring him back. Not occurring to me that because those scores were so different that it was the same guy. I really thought they kind of got like a younger, hipper guy to do the second one to try to make it appeal to the young people. No, that's Jerry Goldsmith again, and I'm with you. I love how he did that. I love how when you sort of listen to him side by side, different but similar. It's really, really good. I'm with you there.
100%. Great film. Absolutely got to watch it, but go in with the right state of mind. You're not looking for high art here, ladies and gentlemen. This is just a fun movie. And that's it.
Totally agree. It hits all the marks correctly, and Stallone / Cameron, they know how to do an action film.
It's a shame they never teamed up again.
Yeah, it is very true. Very true.
Well, and thus ends our discussion of Rambo First Blood Part 2, the awkwardly named sequel to the wonderful First Blood. But next week, ladies and gentlemen, the Rambo series continues as we get into some really funky stuff as we review Rambo 3, losing the First Blood title and just sticking with Rambo.
Yes, that weirdly awkward. The string of titles for this franchise is very strange indeed. So,
yeah, it's even going to get stranger as we go along, but we'll get there. So, Joe, my man, excellent show as always.
Another good one, my friend, and I will see you next week. Thanks for listening to the Reviews Without Remorse podcast with Joe and Dave. Join us here every Thursday for a new episode. And be sure to check out the Reviews Without Remorse channel on YouTube for spoiler-free reviews of new releases. If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider becoming a patron. You can find our page on patreon.com. As little as $1 a month goes a long way. All clips in this podcast are used for commentary and critique, and is considered fair use. No copyright infringement is intended.